Years turned to decades and decades turned to centuries, as the water remained where it stood. Generations came and went, until they no longer remembered how the waters rose, except for remains just over the skyline. New homes returned to the ground as worry about floods subsided, but the village faced a different issue: drinking water. They started harvesting some of the regular snow that fell, but when it melted, they frequently found dirt mixed with the water. Roughly 300 years after the waters froze, a woman, later referred to as Juliet the Innovator, presented to the community with an idea. Rather than wait for the water to come to them as snow, why not go to the water itself? Venturing to the ocean proved useless, as several villagers didn't return. Those who did brought back water so saturated with salt their utensils floated. Not to be deterred, Juliet suggested another option. Dozens turned out to try collecting ice. Through trial and error, they gradually learned to cut it and allow the ice to melt into cauldrons. Once melted, the ice proved to be in near perfect condition. While others were satisfied, Juliet was not. When a trader from the east brought dripstone to the village, it sparked a new idea. She dedicated her life to finding a sustainable way to produce water and hoped dripstone could hold the key. After studying it for some time, Juliet thought she found the answer. She realized that she could make large crystals on the underside of dripstone by placing water on top of it. These crystals, held together by bits of water, would also allow the water to move through them. While the process proved slow, she could place cauldrons underneath these crystals and gather water that dripped through them. While she couldn't understand why, the water that laid on top of the dripstone never lessened. Between the water from the ice and dripstone, she was able to supply the village with what they needed. Enough water not only to drink, but to cook, bathe, and clean. Until her dying breaths, Juliet never gave up on the idea of finding a more efficient way to generate their own water. Now the warehouse she built is run by generations of her descendants, although none have yet learned how to speed up the dripstone. This episode, we are rebuilding this village. So my goal here is to meet the village's basic needs with these builds. So it's food, water, and shelter. And I'm honestly really just looking forward to this. It feels like exactly the kind of build that I want to be doing right now, where I can just kind of zen out and let it go. So I have my color palette over here. I've started this road and kind of set out a couple different branches, so I have a few different designated areas to work in. I'll check back in when I feel like I have something accomplished. According to the replay mod, it's been about 2 hours, and I think this is starting to fill in. So I have these 4 houses built. I'm not completely sure I'm sold on how they look, but I think I'm just not the biggest fan of modern style in general. So I'm trying. With the gardens starting to grow now, I think that's helping to kind of help fill in this space. And I want to try building some more trees dotted around once I get all of the buildings in. Plant some flowers, and I think that will also help make this feel a little bit more full and busy. But then when it comes to basic needs, this is going to be more of a warehouse than those that are houses. So, like I said earlier, my main goal with this is to set up food, water, and shelter in the village. With all of these, it'll be about 8 houses. With what I've currently got mapped out, that's a pretty decent start for housing, especially when they're this large, and potentially multi-family homes if they needed to be. And then I've got several of these that are connected to like small gardens and like wheat fields. They're not anything big, but again, this is a small village, so it doesn't really need to be a lot to hypothetically be able to cover all of the residents in the area. And then I've also got this field over here that is actually specifically not connected to this house, even though the way it's mapped out right now, they would share a wall. And this is more of a community garden, where if you don't have anything else and you can't afford anything, there is food here. And it's actually all beetroot. It's not like it's the best food, but you will always have access to something. That fills our 2 of our 3 requirements. But the third one with water is a little bit more interesting because this is a cold biome. And so, hypothetically, all of the water is ice. And when I did this Egyptian style housing over here, part of the story was the rising sea levels and then freezing temperatures. Like it is icy and snowy year round here now. And so there's really not even time where the village could gather up water to secure for the rest of the year. So this warehouse is going to be where they cut out pieces of ice and bring it into this insulated building where the ice can melt and they can then get usable water. And then this is the little shop, isn't quite the right word, but essentially a shop where people come to get their, buckets of water for the day. So I think I'm gonna take a little snack break and then work on hopefully getting the last 4 houses done tonight. It's actually been a couple days, but I did a little bit more research and I built the remaining houses, and I feel a lot better about these now. I think the issue I was running into is I was researching actual modern architecture as opposed to Minecraft modern architecture. And I think my brain just needed a little bit more help with translating this than it does with other types of builds. But I think I've come to stuff that I am okay with. I think I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of modern architecture in general, so this has been a struggle. I feel better about these other couple that I did earlier after I put some of these azalea leaves around. It just kind of helped, I think, break things up to me. And it feels a lot better. It's more lively and they're really helpful. Leaves are incredibly helpful with things like this giant, just black wall. Throw some leaves on it and it looks at least a little bit better. I think I'm almost done with this area for now, except my villagers still need water. So I guess I'm off to research warehouses. So this is what I ended up coming up with for the warehouse. It's definitely not exactly what I had in mind, but I feel like it works. It makes sense in terms of kind of the rest of the builds that we have, even though it itself is a somewhat different style. It's a different material because I built this one out of quartz, whereas everything else is concrete. But I think it still works in the area. And if I go inside, this is how the village gets its water. So we have ice here in various stages of melting. We have more ice packed along the sides, getting ready to melt. And then up here, I made a couple dripstone / water farms. And I didn't even put any water into these cauldrons. That is from it dripping through. So this is kind of the area where there are people experimenting with ways to make renewable water so that they don't have to go through this process and keep chipping bits of ice out of the river itself, which reminded me, I actually wanted to break some of the ice here as like areas where they've been harvesting, but so you can see where they've been collecting the ice that is now in there and melting and all of that. So I had this custom tree over here already, but I built this one as well, and there's another one. Where did I put it? So I did these two, and then I did this one over here. And they're just spruce trees, but they're just meant to kind of bring in and liven up the area a little bit more. I have some spore blossoms hidden around, so we have the particle effects. Now that I have these azalea bushes dotted around, I think that's helping or kind of break up the lack of texture and just general blockiness of the whole just modern build style in general here. So now I guess it's time to go roll the wheels for next episode. What biome type are we getting? Okay, cold biomes. I'll take cold. We can do cold. Colonial American feels like that can make sense for a government build on stony shores. I like it. Let's see what that biome actually looks like. Goodbye, modern village. That's half done. I'm sure I will be back at some point. 1,000 blocks away, so we're getting a bit of a distance this time. Let's go. Okay, yes, this is lovely. This is great. This is an actual biome that I can build in. We can do this. Is going to be an excellent canvas. I don't have anything specific in my brain yet, but I think this is going to be a good space. Let me know if you have any suggestions. I'm always open to ideas. And I will see you next time. Bye. I do also want to take a second to say thank you, which feels a little bit weird. The last episode, that was my first Skyblock episode. With that one, I crossed 50 subscribers, which, like, 50 subscribers isn't a lot. It doesn't feel like a lot, but it is still kind of more than I honestly expected to get. So I just wanted to take a second to say thank you and welcome. We're still kind of figuring out what I'm doing here. but I'm trying to tell stories. And I think part of that story is figuring out what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So welcome along for the ride, and I hope you stick around.